Namaste. Welcome to Such Conversations Matter. Conversations which represent the future we should have. I'm your host, Saurabh Nanda. Today's guest is Mr. Srikanth and from Bangalore. Srikanth is a business consultant who's worked with companies like E&Y and currently is a director at Grant Thornton, and he has years of experience under his belt. But most recently, he started becoming an executive coach wherein he helps young students and young professionals in improving their career journey and helping them unleash their fullest potential. Srikanth and I actually met online after he listened to one of the podcast episodes I did in season 1 with Dr. Raman Kayatri. And Srikanth is also a fellow podcaster belonging to the Lockdown Podcasters Club. So he's going to be the second guest on season 2, who is also a podcaster after Mr. Richard Farkas. Srikanth also introduced me to a wonderful program called the Positive Intelligence Program, initiated by Dr. Shehzad Shameen in the US. He's a Stanford professor. Amazing program. It was an 8-week exercise with Srikanth and 3 other amazing people who are also coaches. And we learned so much about psychology and empathy and different parts of our brain and so many other things. It is such an exciting journey to understand yourself in a deeper way. All these are going to make some wonderful questions when we deconstruct what is executive coaching. So let me invite Srikanth over. Hi Srikanth, how are you?
Hey Saurabh, doing great. Nice to chat up with you.
Absolutely. I think it's been quite some time since we chatted, like this, and I'm glad that it's for the podcast.
I know the podcast has brought us together back.
Absolutely. In fact, you're the second lockdown podcaster that I'm interviewing on this season this time. Another one is Mr. Richard Farkas, a gentleman from Finland. He also started a podcast because of the lockdown and everything. And I think there's a very nice club of lockdown podcasters in the world today who just chose to find their passion like you did.
Maybe we should start a group on Clubhouse, Lockdown Podcasters.
Probably we should. So definitely, Srikanth, in 2020, you definitely started a podcast, which is an amazing podcast, Inspire Someone Today. I'm asking everyone how their 2020 was. So apart from the podcast, what else happened in your life in 2020?
Well, it's an interesting question, and again, depending on whom you ask the question, the answer definitely varies from person to person. I would say 2020 has been a very interesting year from different perspectives, right? I think for me, at least, I would say it's been an year of lot of reflection and year also to be grateful for lot many things. Right, while the world is still reeling under the pandemic, I was definitely lucky to kind of keep going with what I've been doing on the professional front. By God's grace, health of myself and the family has been pretty good so far. I think with the vaccine around, people have also gotten into getting their first or second jabs getting done. But if you look at overall how the year has been from a business standpoint, from individual standpoint, I would say it's been a challenging year across the board. Personally, for me, very first time having to manage a large team working remotely. Doing it one odd days is a different thing, but doing it for one full year is a completely different thing. So it has kind of helped me to re-channelize, re-look into the whole paradigm of how you would manage teams, manage businesses in a very virtual environment. Second thing, it has also brought the entire world, just not India, the entire world into a common platform. Now, the common denominator is the same, right? Everybody is working from home. Everybody's challenge related to the pandemic is more or less the same. And you've got to kind of stay put for yourself and for your family members. So, in that way, it's been a level playing field. In that way, have been able to get a lot more closer with your clients, with your team members, with your counterparts. In that way, I think there's a broader degree of empathy that has come through in this year as well. So if you ask me, This year has been a year of gratitude, a lot more empathy, and definitely a lot more learning, both personal as well as professional.
Well, that's amazing to hear. I mean, gratitude, empathy, and learning. I don't think there's a better combination of things one could ask for from a year, especially a year which was 2020, which is so devastating for so many people across the world. Um, Shrikant, you've had such a long, amazing, illustrious career. Would you like to summarize that for us? And yes, towards the end, we would also like to know your motivation towards inspire someone today, the podcast.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for that. You've been very kind to say that it has been an illustrious career. I would say it's been a career which is still work in progress. So I'm still not done with it. I'm still learning by the day. But yes, I think if I were to kind of break down my career, I would split it into two halves. The first half was more about figuring it out, where do I fit in, what do I need to do in order to kind of keep moving ahead, what are the trials and tribulations of a corporate world, what does it take for one to kind of succeed, do better, excel well, all of those things. The second half has been more about, okay, now that you know all of these things, how to actually implement it and make it easy for people who look up to you. How do you kind of work towards in leaving a legacy for yourself, work towards in making the role not only good for you but for everybody else who kind of come on to you. So in that way, it's been very rewarding career so far, Saurabh, both in terms of learning, having access to wonderful set of mentors along my way. And it has also given me a couple of reflection points. One and foremost is be willing to be open to any kind of opportunities that come your way. So I've always been in that journey of being inquisitive of what new comes through and being able to kind of sign up for that. So that has definitely helped all along my career. Second, as I mentioned, having access to a good bunch of mentors and coaches, so to say. And the third element is always have the ability to kind of look at the big picture and start joining the dots. You'll never always get to a point where it's a ready mix saying that okay, do ABC and you'll get to D. But it's always about how do you get to D by knowing what all do you know in the course of your career journey. So that's how I would kind of summarize my career. Learning the first half of it, second half of it is reflecting from those learnings and implementing those learnings both for myself and people who are coming along with me.
Right. And then 2020 finally led you to start inspire someone today. Was it part of the big strategy of connecting the dots and leaving a legacy? What was the motivation behind that?
Well, there is definitely not a big agenda around it, as all of us know what the world went through in 2020. So somewhere I read this phrase called as urgent optimism, and that is what the world wanted in 2020. That's what the world needs even now. So when everything was uh, when everything was so what do you say, not as brighter as one would have wanted it to be. I think I started reflecting what is that I can contribute to create a sense of positivity around when there's so much of negativity, cynicism going around. Is there something that I can do to kind of contribute? That's where this whole thought came to me saying that, okay, what is that I can control in my own sphere of life? And this is one area, it was very dear to me. That is something I could kind of come up doing was to talk to people and talk to them, bring their career journeys, their life journeys to the open. And if you look at it, both in the corporate world as well as in our academics, that is what I saw a lacune is our inability to kind of have this kind of packaged information or packaged what do you say ingredients, so to say, for people to know, okay, what can they do in order to move forward in their career, in order to make a decision in making a job change, in order to kind of take a call saying that is the course that I'm taking, is it the right one? If I'm stuck, whom do I kind of reach out to, so on and so forth. So that's where this whole idea of the podcast Inspire Someone Today came in. Because even if one inspiration can be done through each one of us, I think that's my tagline of Inspire Someone Today, which is create ripples of inspiration. Just how a stone dropped in water creates ripples. That's how inspiration is all about. You go inspire one individual, that individual inspires somebody. It create a community of inspired people, and that's my small uh, contribution to what I can do to the society, and hope to kind of continue on this particular journey.
Amazing. Shrikant, you also you've invited such amazing people on your show. You know, there are executive coaches, there are umpires, there are like cricket umpires, then there are journalists, there are civic society organization leaders, and so. Uh, how are those big leaders coming together in the format that you've created in your podcast?
Well, there is definitely not a specific path that I would want to kind of create, saying that I would want a specific set of individuals or a specific set of topics to be discussed on my podcast. If, like you rightly mentioned, I tried to get a very eclectic mix of people across various domains, across various industries, uh, to bring home a point on couple of things. One is challenges are not limited to a specific domain or specific industry, and two, success can be accomplished across industries and across sectors. So it is not again, if you are in the corporate world is what defines success, or if you are in a non-corporate world is what defines success. But the journey towards that and how each individuals in those respective industries in those sectors have gone about walking through their own journeys, their own struggles, their lessons from those is what intrigued me a lot. So that's why my attempt was to kind of bring in people from different walks of life and try to reflect onto their own journeys, and through that reflect onto our own journeys, to say that okay, if this is what somebody had to kind of go through, if this is what their experience was, how can we bring it in our walk of life? So that's been the attempt made to get a diverse set of people and see if there is some kind of a common thread that kind of comes across as a resultant of talking to these wonderful individuals.
Very interesting. Shrikant, you initially mentioned that you had some really, really good mentors. You were lucky enough to have some really good mentors in your life. And since first season of Such Conversations Matter, I've been asking quite a few people about their mentors in life. And the common thread is that all of them had that, unique personality or presence of somebody, a leader, who kind of directed their careers also, kind of gave that validation and that understanding. Okay, this is something that you should be doing because you're good at it. I can objectively see, and that is something that I can observe in so many other successful people's life stories also. Coming to the topic of our podcast today, Shrikant, why do you think, let's start with mentor actually. Why do you think mentorship is required for almost everyone of any kind of profession?
Absolutely, yes. I think short answer is we all need, no matter where we are in our life, in our careers, in the situations that we are in. I think having an additional pair of eyes and ears to kind of walk through what we are going through can be revalidation, can be a recommendation, can be an additional layer of recommendations or suggestions. But it is definitely helpful to have a sounding board.
Perfect. And do you think such mentors are easily available and accessible?
Absolutely. It kind of goes back to what you define as a mentor, right? There's nobody will be walking around wearing a board saying that I am a mentor, right? I think it's there for all of us to look around us, and this has again come in uh, global development, more from an both Western as well as Eastern philosophy standpoint, time immemorial, we have always looked up to elders in the family as mentors, right? And
Mm.
why do they qualify for that title as mentors? Because They have walked down the path that we have not necessarily taken, or they have had the experiences of life that we have not necessarily experienced for ourselves, or they've had the experiences of interacting with a lot more people in the society, in the community that we have not been able to kind of look into. I think from that standpoint, we have mentors in our own family. Beyond the family, it can be friends, it can be our own relatives circle, it can be within our own office communities, people who have had more experience than us, people who have done things that we have always kind of sat back and said, probably when I kind of get to that experience level, that is the person that I want to be, or that is the kind of project that I want to lead. So it's been there. We just need to put on that lens to see people from that perspective and say, okay, I think he or she qualifies to be that kind of a mentor I'm looking for.
So, that makes sense. And the Indian philosophy of also having a guru who's a friend, philosopher, guide, all in one, which is such a rare thing to happen. And mostly we look up to our elders because of their life experiences. Now, in today's highly complicated world, actually, there are so many different directions one can choose to do things in. It is not necessary that we might find the same kind of experience available to the mentors who are around us, and that is what a lot of executive coaches actually tell the people, that we might be able to take you through that journey, because you might not find that experience or guidance from somebody else. So what exactly is executive coaching or personal coaching?
Okay, I think it's an interesting topic. We touched upon mentoring. Now we are kind of talking about coaching, and lot many times we interchangeably use these terminologies of a coach and a mentor. There is a slight difference between what a mentor is and what a coach is. A mentor, like we discussed, is somebody who comes with a subject matter expertise, who knows certain things in a specific area. We go for him or her to get solutions, to get answers ready made. Whereas a coach is slightly different. The coach is, as you touched upon the fact of the ancient Gurukul kind of a system, is a guide, right? Is somebody who can help you to find solutions to the life's complicated or not so complicated kind of a questions that we have. So executive coaching in that sense is more in terms of showing the path for the questions that we have held in our own selves. Sometimes it's validating, sometimes able to figure out what those solutions can be. And in the current context that we are in, the VUCA world that we are in, particularly in the corporate environment, uh, the more frame of references we have, the better decision making can happen. So we can't be on top of everything that is happening around us. It is humanly impossible given the pace of change that is just not happening with technology, but even to the business world. So you definitely need to have a coach who can help you to kind of take walk you through that particular path. So that is where the executive coaching comes in. Long time back, I read this particular wonderful article on Harvard Business Review, which basically came up with a concept called as personal board of directors. Okay, so they drew parallel to what lot of corporates has even today. Lot of corporates have a board of directors, right? Not because the CEO at the helm is not capable enough. That's the reason why he or she is brought into that place. But he or she would also need that additional layer of direction, a sounding board of sorts. So the board of directors are people who are drawn from different walks of life, having experience, expertise in different industries, different organizations, or organizations that is beyond that particular industry or sector, so on and so forth. And this is what a lot of successful organizations have seen benefit coming out of it from the board of directors. They're nothing but acting as coaches, sounding boards for the CEOs. So if you take the same balance to us as individuals, how many of us can boast to have our own personal board of directors? Not many, right? So we don't take the same level of interest when it comes to our own self as we do it in an organization level. And again, a coach in the current scheme of things can be for different things in our own personal lives. You can have a career coach, you can have a diet or a health coach, you can have a financial coach, you can have a spiritual coach, so on and so forth. So if you look at the construct, every individual would benefit by having 4 or 5 different coaches in the areas of their own personal life. So you can figure out what are the areas that you would want to kind of look into, and then elicit people who have the experiences or expertise in these various fields. So you can go talk to somebody in your own community who is a good fitness trainer or who has a better knowledge around fitness. Can that particular act as your personal fitness coach? Similarly, somebody is good with their own financials, so they can act as your financial. So the whole point I'm trying to put down here is a coach in a corporate setting, executive coach is very much needed, not for anything else, but help you to elevate your own thought process, elevate your own journey. Like mentioned earlier, helping you to connect those dots that we don't necessarily see by ourselves, or sometimes help us to validate it. On the personal side, extrapolating that, we tend to benefit by having those bunch of sounding boards or board of personal board of directors for ourselves.
Amazing. So clearly, I mean, there is a lot of knowledge and information in the world. A lot of people have shared their experiences through books and different media. Um, but then, even after absorbing all that information and learning from their experiences, well, so to say, learning from their experiences, you still need a human connection, a human sounding board. Otherwise, the processing of that information is incomplete. Would that be a right way to
Absolutely. See, we're
summarize
all
this?
social animals. We all feel validated when somebody acknowledges either our thoughts, feelings, or interests, right? How do you kind of get that
Mm.
validated when you kind of talk to another social being to say that, hey, this is what I'm going through, and somebody might come back to you saying that this is pretty natural, or somebody might say, how can I help you to go get over this particular feeling? So this can only get validated when you talk to another human species.
Nice. So, Shrikant, how did you decide to become a professional coach? Can you share your journey of being a professional coach so far?
Sure, Saurabh. Again, like I said, coaching is not something that one fine day you'll wake up and say, I have arrived, I am a coach from today onwards. Right? So, coaching is something that is definitely life changing as a coach and as well as a coachee. But more important, it's a lifelong learning process. So, I just started my journey as a coach, but this was always something that I aspired to do something is help people to unleash their potentials, and that way wanting to be a coach and having a framework to be a coach are two different things. So what I've kind of gotten now into a process is understanding the framework, understanding the methodology around, okay, what works together as a good coach. It's just not about hearing out somebody, it's not about saying that, yeah, I am a coach, but it's more about what kind of direction can you give when somebody is looking out for you. So I have kind of strengthened or in the journey of strengthening my own understanding of what is coaching, what is not coaching, and how can one be an effective coach by the practice of various techniques within the realm of coaching. And again, within the coaching environment, you find a whole lot of different coaches, different set of coaching certifications, methodologies, so on and so forth. So I have kind of followed the traditional coaching framework, which is also being recognized internationally by the International Coaching Federation. So, along with that, there is another coaching framework which is called as a mental fitness coaching. So, while all of us focus on the physical fitness of it, there's also a mental fitness around how a strong mind can overcome any kind of barriers around it. So, I'm following what is known as the uh, positive intelligence coaching track, the PQ coach, which focuses more on mind to strengthen the mind cells. So it's been very beautifully elicited again based on research based on the four different aspects of science, which is positive psychology, neuroscience, um, things like that. So, which kind of reinforces that if you strengthen your mind, and when you kind of call it as strengthening the mind, it kind of outlines it around the two uh, elements of where each of us as individuals get stuck is defined as our own judges. In a very layman's word, it's called as saboteur, which sabotages us to kind of move forward. So judge is the predominant driver of a saboteur, and the other element is the sage perspective.
Yeah. So, Shrikant, that's amazing, and thank you so much. I think I need to officially also thank you because you introduced me to PQ, Positive Intelligence, by Shazad Shamin, and those 8 weeks with you and our other pod members were transformative, to say the least. I mean, there was so much messaging that used to go on in my head, and suddenly I could see that manifest itself in that framework. I could understand a lot about myself, understand a lot about my behavior, and I could observe it objectively, which I was not able to do before. And it was such an amazing experience. um, Coming to the fact that we are in India, Shrikant, and this probably has not caught up as it has caught up in the West about executive coaching, having personal coaching, and there are so many different methodologies that they have. Yes, we traditionally have people like Shiv Kheda and a few new YouTubers like Mr. Sandeep Maheshwari and Dr. Vivek Bindra and so on, trying to do something similar by telling people. But traditionally, all Indians are all about holy men. And it doesn't even depend on the religion anymore, actually. So because we are such a society that if we find sense coming from one person, doesn't really matter which religion we belong to, we'll just follow that. How do you think that Indians approach this executive coaching when there are so many other spiritual coaches already available?
Now, that's a great question. So I will kind of take your question slightly different and come back to the point here. If for a lot of your listeners and to yourself, you kind of look at the Indian cricket team,
Hmm.
probably about 15 years back. I wouldn't want to go anything beyond that. Probably about 15 years or max 2 decades back, we didn't believe in the whole concept of having a coach, having a coaching support system. All of it was just the Indian cricket team and probably one or two managers to manage the administrative bit of it. That's about it. And when you listen to a lot of the interviews of ex-cricketers of those era, they would kind of laugh at a lot of the things that you get to see today on the focus on fitness, focus on food, nutrition, so on and so forth. And around this time, we also knew why the Australian cricket team was the best cricket team in the world. And this is something I picked up during my conversation with Simon Toffel, who is regarded as one of the best umpires in the game of cricket, was along with the playing 11 that the Australian cricket team had, they had an equally grounded supporting staff who were working behind the scenes. And the supporting staff was just not to carry administrative tasks, but it was more about somebody working on somebody's batting technique, somebody working on somebody's fielding technique. They had a strength and conditioning coach, they had a nutritional coach, all of those things. And that helped the Australian team to kind of be the best team during the 2000 to 2010 kind of a era. And I'm not saying that it all happened because of the coaching, Steve, but that is something that Australian cricket team showed to the world, saying that how you can unleash the potential of this great performing team by having that nudge provided to them behind the scenes. And fast forward today, if you look at any international team, everybody has a huge contingent of the coaching staff, right? And the reason I brought this analogy to you is that is exactly where we are in terms of executive coaching with India or with corporate India, or with lot of the individuals accepting what, because for us we always felt it's a taboo that if you're not performing well in your job, or if something is wrong in who you are as an individual, that's when coach has been assigned to you. But I see lot of paradigm shift happening in this particular space, which basically says you don't have to necessarily have a coach because something is wrong. You're getting a coach because everybody sees a larger potential than what it is today, and hence by tagging along with a coach, you can unleash that potential in a much bigger, much broader way than what it is today. So I'm happy to say that it is catching up. It is not where we were, it is not where the West is today in terms of coaching. Like I said, the entire coaching spectrum has gotten divided into various categories, right? You have a coach who can look at your resume and they call themselves as a resume coach. You have a running coach, you have a breathing coach, so on and so forth. But we are still miles away from getting into those kind of niches. But we are definitely catching up the train of both executive coaching as well as personal coaching. I would say it's just matter of time. Uh, for a lot of us, for a country of our size, it's just not about people waking up to the fact that where can I get coaching, but it is also for a lot of those listening to think about can I become a coach as well. You don't have to necessarily have a subject matter expert to be a coach. All you need to have is inclination to help somebody, to help them grow, to help them to unleash their own best versions.
Absolutely. And so, what do you think? Like, how do you explain that I'm not in competition with the holy man or woman that you follow? Because I know, and those people are doing amazing job because spiritually also we need the same amount of help. But then people, Indians especially, would hesitate to pay because they're already paying in different ways to holy men and women, to priests, to elderly for different kinds of coaching. Whether it is beneficial or not, nobody knows, but only they can tell us actually. But how do you compete with them then?
Well, it's not about competing. I think that group of people have existed from time immemorial, and their place in the society, their place in the community is for certain things. It can be
Mhm.
going and seeking advice, or it can be kind of some people see them as a mediator between the higher self and the individual themselves, so on and so forth. But coaching is slightly different from that standpoint. It is not about you seeking God or salvation, things like that. This is more about your own inner journey. It is more about how do you kind of look at your own potential. You might be stuck, or you might not realize it, or you know how to kind of go about doing it, but not able to kind of figure out a way. I think that is where the differentiation is, to kind of say that we are competing with the holy science out there is not completely right. But I think you got to see this as a new profession in the making, right? So probably just like how you and I are speaking today, a profession like a podcaster didn't even exist probably about 10 years back, for even for people to even think saying that I can make a career out of it. Today that is a possibility. Same is the case with coaching, right? To for some people this can be a career, for some people it can be a side hobby or a hustle. But the whole point here is we are not competing with anybody, but we are to ourselves. So this is an identity that can get created irrespective of what exists in the current setup, current society. And again, the whole intent in this whole journey is about making a difference to somebody, and how is helping them to kind of clear up the cobwebs that they think is shredded around them.
So why do they think that there are cobwebs and misinformation and they need guidance? What is wrong with our education systems? What are some of the fundamental problems which are leading to these confusions which happen mid career or early career or any part of the career actually? What do you think we need to improve in that education system is itself, so that people are able to make better decisions and unleash their potential to the maximum?
I think multitude of things. That's a great question again, Saurabh. It's multitude of things. One is I would kind of squarely put it on just the education system. While it can play a part or role in what it is today, a lot of it also boils down to one is the paradigms that we built for ourselves. So we briefly touched upon the positive intelligence bit of it, where it clearly talks about two elements. One is the sage element and one is a saboteur element. And I would want to kind of use a interesting analogy that I read somewhere very recently, which is basically it's a conversation between an old man and his grand son. Basically, the old man is telling a story to the grandson about a wolf that exists in each one of us, and it is a white wolf and a black wolf. Okay,
Mm,
and each time the white wolf responds to you when you talk about the nicer things, when you kind of talk about the necessities of life, when you give positive strokes, so on and so forth, and the other wolf kind of responds to you when you talk about fear, when you talk about agony, when you talk about not so necessities of life. And the grandchild gets inquisitive and says, okay, which is the stronger wolf? For which the father or the old man responds saying, what do you think? And the response is the one that you kind of feeds, right? So the more you feed
right.
the wolf gets bigger in size, and that has probably got to do with lot of our mental makeup that we keep on telling ourselves as individuals, as a group of folks, saying that I'm not adequate enough, I'm not good enough, I'm not capable enough. So that over a period of time just strengthens your own thought process, and when we start our careers, when you're in your mid careers, you always operate with a point of view saying that okay, this big project is coming, probably I'm not capable enough. That's the kind of tuning that has happened to us over a period of time, which is what we call as a saboteur mindset. It's always trying to pull us down. But on the contrary, if you look at it, where our education system can be very handy is to move away from the whole point of tracking somebody just based on academic marks, tracking somebody based on some kind of a milestone, saying that okay, if you study well, you get a good job, you get a good job, you have a great life. I think those are all fine, but that is not the ultimate purpose of study. The ultimate purpose of study to how deeper the knowledge can be gained, how broader the experience can be unearthed, right? So I think that is where we got to start focusing, give a lot of our young adults the confidence to go out there, experiment with lot many things, fail on lot many things, take those failures not as failures but as learning experiences. So tomorrow when they're in the corporate world, when they kind of have a setback, they'll not worry about okay, if this happens, what will happen to my career. They will look at those setbacks saying that what are my learning opportunities. Why do you think Google is famous? The reason why they are famous today, that's because there is a culture of failing, there's a culture of learning from those failures and then succeeding. So lot of it has to got to do with one, that kind of a paradigm, to having that exposure experiences to fail, to learn from those failures and to kind of bounce forward. And the third element is not to put too much of attachment just to the milestones, whether I pass out with first grade or if I pass out, will I get a job in ABC organization? That kind of means that I have arrived, but go beyond some of the social recognition to lot more deep, which is meaningful and impactful both for the individual and for the larger community. So that is where I would say the current education system can play a bigger role in nurturing the students, in having a lot more self belief, in giving them the
Mm.
space to kind of experiment, learn, fail, and then help them to kind of accelerate into the workforce by understanding the realities of the current world rather than just a bookish kind of an information.
That is so aptly put, Shrikant. That is so very articulately explained, also. Because that is essentially what our education systems have been, I would say, downgraded to. I was having a conversation with Mr. Priyank Sharma in season one. He's an education researcher, and he researches about topics like the side effects of education systems. And he basically said that if we are associating our education system with an economic output,
Right.
that by getting an education, there is a particular economic output that you will achieve. And what people are not realizing is that it's not only economic, and economic output doesn't only depend on your degrees, it also depends on your mental health, your emotional stability, your positivity, and a vision towards life, and all these things as well, which is markedly, invisible from our education systems. Shrikant, the other part of this is cultural. So if education systems are doing this, Indian culture is quite unique in so many ways. I mean, I always like to call India as Europe, but with many more people, many different looking people. So when we have so many cultures, and we have access to our folk wisdom, we have access to our own philosophies, we are one of the oldest civilizations, and then because of the entire British imperialism, we also have access to a lot of Western influence, right? Where do the best coaches come from? That is what my question is. Or can Indians become the best coaches because we have access to both kind of philosophies and we use them well?
The answer is absolutely yes. Again, from a very narrow perspective, if you look at it, can Indians be better coaches? The answer is yes. Or the question to be asked is why not? If you look at it,
Hmm.
there has been a lot of successful Indians who have been running multi-billion-dollar organizations as CEOs. There have been a lot of successful Indians who have been head of medicine in a lot of the big hospitals, a lot of the pharma companies. So there is something inherent within this air that makes us unique in terms of those leadership abilities and capabilities. More than that, I think anybody can become a coach. You don't have to attach a region, religion, culture to all of that to kind of say by checking all of these things, does one qualify to be a coach? Not necessarily, but we have a very unique opportunity here coming from the land that gave yoga to the world, coming from the land that gave meditation to the world, coming from a land that gave lot of leadership principles to the world, to our own ancient scriptures. If you look at all of those things, these practices, if one can kind of do it more diligently, regularly, that is what, when we talk about mental health, when we talk about physical fitness, the whole genesis of it has been in what we call, what we kind of have seen in yogas, in the meditative practices, things like that. So where I think we have an advantage is we have that in our backyard for us to take advantage of it, practice it, and go out to the world and see how one can translate some of these practices to better mental health, some of these practices to better physical health, some of these practices to bring in a lot more ethical and leadership attributes in organization, because this is something that we have all been privy to the folklore that we have all been used to growing up, through the ancient scriptures that we have all kind of seen, heard from generations. So there's definitely things that can work to our advantage only to the extent that you can leverage, right? If you don't leverage it, what good it is for you to have it but not use it. So there is a jump start that we can have. Uh, Again, these are all good starting points, good building blocks for one to be a coach. More important than all of these things is you got to have the burning desire, burning aspiration to help somebody to succeed, to have that kind of a um, empathic view towards somebody's life, somebody's career, to say that I will help this individual to get to his potential, to get to his or her potential, and see them soaring higher than where they are today. That would be,
Absolutely,
in my
Shrikant.
book, what the role of a good coach should be.
Very well put. And I completely agree with you. Indians do have the potential, and they have actually shown to the world. A lot of Indians have shown to the world what kind of leadership capabilities they have. Also, there are people of Indian origin like Mr. Deepak Chopra, Mr. Robin Sharma, and more recently, I would say Mr. Vishen Lekhiani of Mind Valley. Who are actually leading the world. Have been leading the world for quite a few decades now. as far as personal development is concerned. They are at the same level as somebody like Mr. Tony Robbins, for example. And I think there is definitely more to it than just being an Indian and having access to this ancient knowledge. It's also about using it. Shrikant, let's also deconstruct coaching a
Mhm.
little bit. All right. So, we've had these conversations before also in our pod meetings for the positive intelligence exercise that we did. We have positive intelligence with Shirzad Shamin, who's a neuroscientist and psychologist, and deconstructing every bit of it as to which activity of the body affects which part of the brain and why is it important. And then we have, Stephen Covey, who's talking about the habits of successful men and what you need to do. Then we have, Sadhguru from Coimbatore Isha Foundation, who's bringing together. I think he's one of the most transformative gurus or babas from India in the current contemporary times, who's bringing in a lot of knowledge to answer questions which are considered quite modern in today's context. And then we have Sri Ravi Shankar of Art of Living, Brahma Kumaris, and so many other people. The basic tenets of all these different philosophies and approaches are quite
Mhm.
similar. Then why do we have so many different approaches?
Interesting question. So again, if you look at the whole universe, right? There's
Hmm,
so many varieties of fruits, vegetables, grains that the nature gives to us in bounty. But as a human species, we'll not say that okay, I'll take these bunch of vegetables and prepare my food in a certain way, and everybody across the world should prepare their food in a certain way. Doesn't work that way, right? Because every individual's palate is different, every individual's way of cooking the food is different, every individual's way of sensing what is a nice food to taste, what is a nice fruit to taste is different. But what is the ultimate purpose of all of these vegetables cooking and eating is the hungry needs to be fed, the hunger needs to be taken care of. That's our ultimate objective. Doesn't matter how you cook the food, doesn't matter what food, vegetables, cereals that you use, but you kind of take everything that is available from the nature, distill it down to your specific needs, requirements, and then kind of take care of the purpose. The purpose is to kind of feed the hunger, right? I would kind of see all this various philosophies that is out there, various methodologies that is out there is similar kind of a thing, which is man's quest of getting better, right? For you, certain principles might attract. For me, certain principles might attract. For somebody else, certain might attract. What we got to see is it getting me the result that I'm looking for, right? And that is
hmm,
where I see the beauty in this kind of a diversity is that there's no one route for greatness. There are multiple paths towards it.
hmm,
You decide which path you want to
hmm,
take, but the ultimate objective is to again unleash the potential that you feel needs to be unleashed, right? Whether it's a Sadhguru telling you in a certain way or the Tony Robbins telling you in a certain way is all good. It kind of resonates with you. Not everything has to resonate with everybody, but if there are certain principles that resonates with you, then it's good enough. So success is outward, character building is inward. That's what Stephen Covey says, right? So what people see is
hmm,
ultimately Saurabh Nanda, a great podcaster. What the world doesn't get to know is the work that Saurabh puts behind the scenes, be it getting the guest, being preparing for it, all of these things. So what shines is, oh, he's a great podcaster, but there is a lot of work that gets into it. Same is the case with lot of the successful thing or a lot of successful people is it's a journey behind the journey. So I would say take what kind of sounds great for each individual. We are all lucky to have
hmm,
so many variants, so many combinations of either the gurus, the frameworks, or the personalities available out there. Choose what is best. Choose what works for you and make the best out of it.
Absolutely, Shrikant, and thank you so much for that compliment on the podcast. I hope more people listen to this and then they realize how good a podcaster I am. And I think with the conversation like this with you, more people are going to listen to us. So yes, different coaching methodologies and approaches. They all talk about psychology, empathy, spirituality. There are parts of habit formation, and they're all packaged in small
Mhm.
little different ways, which make sense to different people. It's all about the nuances. What are your nuances as a coach? What nuances are you focusing on? What is your methodology or structure which you've created?
Well, it will be very hard to say that I have a specific structure and that's exactly the structure I will use, irrespective of who my coachee is. Because the beauty of coaching is also the flexibility it brings to the table. Because what works for you doesn't necessarily have to work for everybody else. But there are certain underlying themes, what we call as principles, right? The principles are going to be the same, like the law of gravity. No matter what, the law of gravity has to work wherever you are, whoever you are, that is the principle. So you cannot say that, okay, I'm sitting here in Jalandhar, law of gravity has to be different than you're sitting in Bangalore. It doesn't operate that way. So I think a lot of the coaching attributes operate from a point of view of operate on the principles, okay, not necessarily on the actions. So like I said, it's like the character building and what kind of shows up. So I tend to focus more on getting to the root of it. So once you kind of work on the root of what the issue, situation, things like is, then the result just becomes a natural extension of that. So there is no set framework to say that okay, this is exactly how you kind of go about doing it. But there is definitely method to the madness. Not it's all loosey goosey kind of stuff that you just go have a conversation and that's about it. But with individual to individual, things change because what you come, the kind of your own experience that you had, your own paradigms that you have had, your own challenges is completely different from the other person. So for your situation, for your life criteria, there are certain things that we need to operate. Same is the case with somebody else. So I think having that flexibility and being there to listen. I think listening is one of the foremost coaching skills that when you ask any coach, they would say is what is the biggest skill that you need to be a good coach is that ability to listen without judging the other person.
Oh yes, that is key, without judging, and
It's
it's
not an
not
easy
an
thing.
easy thing to do. Um, Not at all. Shrikant, it has been such a wonderful conversation. I hardly saw where the time is going, and we have reached the end of our conversation today. The last section, two small questions left. First question, Shrikant, if somebody wants to become, let's say, a coach, all right, today, or follow a similar career journey that you have, what advice would you like to give them?
I would say if we want to be a coach deep down, do you deep down ask this question, why do you want to become a coach? Is it because you have a burning passion to help somebody in whatever chosen area that you want to be a coach, or is your burning passion something else? So understand what that burning passion is and then channelize your energy towards that particular journey of yours.
So very sound advice. And the next question is one line, one sentence which can make the world a better place. What would you like to that sentence to be?
One word that can one sentence.
One
Okay.
sentence.
I think it's only appropriate to kind of think about this given the times that all of us as a world are going together is the ability to be being comfortable in chaos. Okay, so be comfortable in chaos is something that I would encourage everybody to kind of reflect on and start practicing because the world as we kind of see into the future would be more and more of this. There will be a lot of uncertainty, there will be a lot
Yeah.
of changes happening, there will be a lot of unexpected things that comes our way be- besides the best of our plans. So how do we stay grounded? How do we not let our mental aptitude go for a toss and stay calm and still manage the chaos like it's business as usual kind of stuff? So I would say try practicing being comfortable in the chaos.
Amazing. I think that's very sound advice. And I hope more people realize this, that we are not in control. The nature is. It's just we can flow with the nature. It'll be better for
Exactly.
us. Srikanth, thank you so much for taking out the time and being a guest on such conversations
Thank you
matter
so much.
season
You've
2.
been doing a wonderful job in this, trying to influence a lot of the young adults out there. Congratulations on what you're doing and more success to you.